Mystical Level 7. I had now promised to put the icing on the cake with Mellon Thomas Benedict. If you have my near-death experience, you use a trick from Mellon Thomas Benedict that you never let yourself be impressed, no matter what heaven you end up in, but that you always ask yourself what appears to you and what is behind it. That's his trick. He had died as an atheist in 1982. When he was found, he was already in rigor mortis. That's why he flopped out of his bed with a loud thud. And we don't even know how long he was in this state of death. I can still remember at least 8 hours. So he was the one who traveled the longest. At least according to Kenneth Ring's research. His conclusion is that you can control your near-death experience. And that's also a thing that Chinese masters do, that they say, even the border between life and death is only an absolute border for those who are not aware enough. So we could materialize, dematerialize, those are all degrees of freedom. So I would be happy if we could control our thoughts, feelings, and will impulses and not suffer so much anymore. But humans are great creatures. If you throw this slave spirit, this service character that is not even known among ants, out of yourself, then first ask yourself how the whole thing serves him. And even as a teenager, I thought it was worth considering the saying, I think it was one of the Beatles, that said, I learned all sorts of things at school, but not how to be happy. But that is actually the theme of bliss, not only in Buddhism, but also in Christianity. It's always about happiness. Because their religious provider always encourages them to suffer, they change their religious provider, for example, from Protestant to Orthodox. They're Orthodox again, but they also have, it's Galapagos-like again, so they don't really take it too seriously. But what stands out, for example, is that they don't find a dead Christ on the cross. But he is always the conqueror of death, like someone who has had a near-death experience, as an act of initiation that shows that death has no power over you. You are immortal, unlimited in time, and unlimited in space consciousness at the highest level. Now let Thomas Benedict report the near-death experience. So he died as an atheist. That was the time when he despaired because we were all told that he was. The world will soon collapse ecologically, and of course there will be an arms race. Well, he actually died as a misanthrope. When he saw this light in front of him, as many describe it, he simply asked, "Yes, and who are you? Show yourself." I'll quote him. "As I moved toward the light, I knew intuitively that if I walked into the light, I would be dead. So as I moved towards the light, I said, please wait a minute. Just stand here. I have to think about it. I want to talk to you before I go." To my surprise, the experience came to a halt. So he must have been very self-confident. He was also an artist and glass painter, but without health insurance, which did not aid his recovery. And then he says, "You actually construct your natural experience. It's not a roller coaster ride on a ghost train." My request was granted, and I chatted with the light for a while. The light took various forms, such as Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, mandala, archetypal images and signs. I asked the light, "What's actually going on here? Please, light, explain yourself to me. I really want to know what reality I am in." My comment on that now. You notice, it's actually the same topic that makes the difference between dreams and lucid dreams. While dreaming, the lucid dreamer is again aware on this meta level that it is just a dream, and he can choose the DVD, as one would put it today. I would like to go one better and say that the monks have discovered that we are largely in a dreamlike state in everyday life. So if 95% happens through programs, it's a completely different life if you look over your shoulders like a lucid dreamer and say, everything that I perceive as I perceive others and what I believe, what my goal in life is, are just fantasies. And actually, we only live consciously in the moments, like people, In the phase when they are very in love with each other or when they are doing their favorite activity, because then they choose very consciously what they concentrate on, what they let influence them, and similar. And that's why the monks try to increase their concentration as much as possible, as high as possible. So our brain has clock frequencies that you can hardly imagine. And the greater the degrees of freedom become. So the thing with the mantra is why the core exercise in my seminars is so stupid that it feels so stupid at first, that you repeat your focus over and over again. This is a primary means of getting the brain to work faster. In addition to certain nutritional things, of course. Sugar makes you stupid. Unfortunately, it also causes attention disorders and other problems such as depression. Monks always left out certain things. So we're coming back. He is very self-confident here, highly concentrated, and so he is aware of it. I can control the whole thing. Another side comment. There is a meeting between the Dalai Lama and North American Neo-Gone scientists, and the whole thing has also been published. That's what the Mind and Life group is like. And the book is called Dream, Sleep, Death. The researchers talk to the Dalai Lama about the degrees of reality of these states of consciousness. Of course, near-death research already existed back then, and they now wanted to know from the Dalai Lama and from a Buddhist perspective, how real are these things? Are these really descriptions of what awaits us? And the Dalai Lama is always so diplomatic. And he answers somewhat evasively, well, not necessarily reality, but rather they are still very dreamlike states. And the same thing is actually confirmed here by Mellon Thomas Benedict, if you just notice the light. So everyone takes it with their own expectations, otherwise one person would see Christ and another would see Krishna. The light answers, now continue with the text. The information that I received, where he said, what reality am I actually in? The information that I received was that one's beliefs determine the type of feedback that one receives before the light. If you're a Buddhist or a Catholic or a fundamentalist, you get feedback accordingly. You have the chance to look at it and check it, but most people don't do it. From the light's revelations, it was clear to me that what I was seeing was the matrix of our own high self. And now you understand again that I say, become one with Christ, union with the Godhead. This has been a theme here since ancient Egypt, Roscamos, heavenly wedding, so that what was separated comes back together. Even if you die, that's the thing again with Ars Mogen, the why the Buddhists always go through the various states of consciousness after death, meditatively beforehand, so that they don't fall for it, and so that of course they get the joker, so if possible travel to the highest heaven. We are happy when we spend our time there on green meadows. The special thing about Mellon Thomas Benedict, which I didn't say before, is that the beard at the end, before he had to go back into the body, is that he remembers everything. And the Dalai Lama also says in the book Dream, Sleep, Death, when people forget so much when they come back into the body, it is a sign of the authenticity of the experience, because the level of information is different, and a lot is lost when the information is transferred to the brain. It's just not something that comes from your brain, otherwise you would definitely notice everything. Now I'll go further. So, of course, he had himself shown in different skies and things like that. He wanted to know which religion is the best. So he asked really pragmatic questions, which inspires me as a theologian. And I actually see him as such a mystic who has traveled through the highest heavens. Of course, that is language and time. This cultural influence of near-death experiences has also been proven. There is a Harvard dissertation from the 1990s, Carol Zaleski. The focus is from early Christianity through the Middle Ages. And so I say, get out of educational hell if they had died in the Middle Ages. So how your previous expectations determine what you then experience. If they had died in the Middle Ages, most of them had to go through the fire poles, over slippery bridges when they slid down. They fell into rivers where demons wanted to devour them, thorns, hedges and the like. If they die today, the answer they will probably get most of the time is that they need to have a learning experience. Do you notice anything in a well-educated society? It could be that this is perhaps a small part of hell, so get out that in our slippery bridges, and don't think, oh God, what do I have to do for my karma so that I don't have a learning experience like that again? The whole thing is actually nicer on me light. These are also cultural translations, so who are we as people? The light showed me the matrix of the true self, and it became very clear to me that everyone, i.e. every human being, is one being. All human beings are interconnected, and there is nothing about hierarchy here, so that they form one being. We are in fact one being, different aspects of the one being. This did not refer to any particular religion. This is what was conveyed to me. It was the most beautiful sight I've ever seen. I walked in, and it overwhelmed me. It felt like the love you had always wanted, and it was love that heals, makes whole, and regenerates. So Ms. Bachau also fell into this level, so that the cancer was there and gone. And that's what I mean when I say that we don't need to despair about people, but rather first pay attention to where did I get my image of people from? Schools, mass media, the news are in meditation on the biggest horn oxen and cattle who violently regulate conflicts even at the government level. So what I look at, I reinforce, but it is not reality. Man is a wonderful creature. As I asked the light for further explanation, I understood we have a grid around the planet in which all resting selves are connected. A friend in Berlin, who also had a near-death experience as a child, that was drowning, said she saw that we were connected to each other like a net of pearls. So she saw it as a net of pearls. And then you might also notice what is meant by Indra's net. And that would be nice if we had already experienced this at school or in church. And it's not just individual mystics who look at it, more about people. We are all soulmates. We are parts of the same soul, branching out in different creative directions but remaining the same. About God, he says, God is not there. Don't look for God outside. Look for him here. You, through yourself, begin the greatest love affair you have ever had with yourself. You'll love everything about it. Even when I work with people in exercises, I try to give them the exercise to just bring their attention to that level and then say, if you are now connected to this level, hold something that you may have been ashamed of before or where you were desperate into that level and just see what happens. And often answers come, a completely new perspective comes, full of wisdom and full of love. So there is no criticism. Forget this judging God. It is the devil. What did he see about the world, the earth, our reality? There is no beginning and no end. Scientists see the Big Bang as a single event that created the universe. I saw that this Big Bang is one among many that continually and simultaneously produce universes. The ancient sages knew this. They said that God periodically creates new universes by breathing out and destroys others by breathing in. These eras were called yugas. I was aware of the absolute rouse. I saw all the Big Bangs and the emergence and disappearance of the yugas. Instantly I entered her at the same time. I discovered that every little creation is Shelley creative. It is very difficult. I still don't have the words for it. The teaching is absolutely zero. Chaos that contains all possibilities. It is absolute consciousness. Much more than universal intelligence. So the teaching, that's what I mean by what in Christianity is the Father, or something like the origin. Of course it is not a man with a beard, but on the contrary, absolute imagelessness and formlessness. Where is the teaching? I know it. The teaching is inside and outside of everything. At this moment, as you live, you are always simultaneously inside and outside of the teaching. You don't have to go somewhere or die to get there. The teaching is the vacuum of nothingness between all physical manifestations. The space between atoms and their components. So this is also something like the Father level, the highest level. And in that respect, it's fitting. Eckhart Tolle once gave people the exercise that he said, when you hear noises, just concentrate on the silence between the noises. When a room is cluttered, focus on the in-between, where there is nothing, so we can immerse ourselves at any time, and I hope that this idea of this world and the hereafter will crumble as much as possible in the dualistic religion. They simply cannot be enlightened. But this is what the mystic says. Everything is already there. And also this nun's dance, this standing now, eternity is here and now. And that is also the goal of the original Christian service in Orthodoxy, which says worship is there for people to experience heaven on earth. And this requires, that is my comment, certain stimuli on our brain so that it releases this fixation on the visible. And in this respect, the Orthodox Church service still works a lot with repetition. So they don't just have a Kyrie, but Kyrie, 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 Kyrie. So it's an absolute step up from what Taizé does. And then you see when church services naturally leave out this repetition, for example, or certain forms of singing, and the Orthodox also have quarter tones, then the chance that our brain will change the frequency band is rather slim. And the more information you receive from everyday reason, the more you will be in the beta frequency, i.e. 14 to 30 hertz, similar to what happens at school or at work. In this respect, of course, there is an afterlife, but in the sense of an increase. We are more the Father, the creative source, in which we constantly bathe here and now. And the main problem I see in religion is when attention is directed in the wrong direction, waiting until you're dead. General statements. You don't fall any deeper than into God's hands. Compare this statement with that of Mellen Thomas Benedict. I glided through the center, so after he was in the light, he then just wanted a journey through the galaxies and what it looks like behind them. I'm leaving out a lot here now. Fortunately, the text is then available to you. I glided through the center of our galaxy, which is a black hole. The universes are recycled in the black holes. Do you know what's on the other side of a black hole? We are here, our galaxy, which is a recycled product from another universe. As an energy image, the galaxy looked like a fantastic place of light. All the energy on this one side of the Big Bang is light. All subatomic, atomic matter, every star, every planet, even consciousness is made of light and has a frequency and or particles. Light is alive. Everything is made of light, even stones. So everything is alive. Everything emerged from the light. Everything is very intelligent. This is what I mean by directing attention. It is important that you tell them what there is to see, what they can expect, instead of limiting them to a bonsai perception perspective. We are not everything, but we are the part that is aware of it. That's about people and the world in brief. Now, of course, the great enlightenment, God. At least according to Mellen Thomas Benedict. Maybe not the absolute truth, but some small suggestions. What mystics call the teachings is not a teaching. She is full of energy. My comment is that there is always this misunderstanding that people like to hear it in a nihilistic way. I like to compare it with cake dough, which is still unshaped and contains all the possibilities. Our thoughts shape it. What mystics call the voids is not a void, it is so full of energy, a different kind of energy that created everything we are. Everything has been vibration since the Big Bang. By the way, my comment again. There was a physicist, Nikola Tesla, who also said, if you want to understand the universe and God, think in terms of frequencies. You will notice that. What we see here is visible light only in the electromagnetic spectrum. But even a bat sees something different. So that's it for people who say, I only believe what I can see. Even colors, even sounds can all be specified in hertz, kilohertz, megahertz, and then with superscript numbers. I am very much in the process of initially translating the whole mysticism into brain frequencies. That the monk is someone who is able to consciously control his brain frequencies and becomes aware of it. The brain is a transmitter and a receiver. We are voters of beings, so that is also this knowing field. And no information is lost, as the deceased are just on a slightly different frequency band. So that's my answer to, you don't fall any deeper than into God's hand. And because consciousness is not tied to hearing, we simply change the frequency band, even when hearing stops working, and even get into better bands. The task would of course be to have this in place during your lifetime, because that is the greatest potential. This is us. That's why I like to say, it's not in us, but rather we should live in this fullness. So the emptiness. Everything is frequency from the first word, which is the first vibration. So that translates into poor with this om or or in high break. It's not about the word, but anthroposophists like to have glass plates, perhaps not very precisely described, have sand on them, and then go to them with a violin bow. And you notice that what is unformed, one frequency is enough to allow very precise patterns to emerge from the seed. So that's what I mean by everything is frequency or primal information. And so the cells in our body are organized according to these frequencies. And if we realize that our brain can generate frequencies itself, we can transfer them to each other, we can transfer them into our body. But that's a little digression again, because I'm so excited that it's happening here too. The biblical I am actually has a question mark behind it. I am, what am I? So God's creation is an undertaking to explore his self in every possible way, whereby he engages each of us in this self-exploration for eternity. Everything is the big self. Therefore, God knows when a leaf falls to the ground. It is possible because the center of the universe is always where you are. Wherever there is an atom, there is the center of the universe. There is God, and God in the void. Finally, I found myself completely outside of time and space as we know it. In this expanded state of consciousness, I discovered that creation is absolute pure consciousness, or God entering into the experience of life as we know it. The teaching itself knows no experience. So it's boring in a way. It is the precursor to life before the first vibration. God is much more than life and death. I was in the void, and I was aware of everything that had ever been created. It was as if I was seeing through the eyes of God. I had become God. Suddenly I wasn't me anymore. The only thing I can say is, I looked through God's eyes and suddenly I knew why every atom existed and I could see everything. The interesting thing about my stay in the void was that I came out knowing that God is not there. God is here. It's all about this never-ending search of the human race for God. God gave us everything. Everything is here, that's what it's all about. And our function so far is to help God in his self-exploration. Although again, I see this as being a bit too dualistic and a bit too mission-focused. People are trying so hard to become God that they should realize that we are already God, and God is becoming what we are. That is the real point of the matter. So much for the answer to God from a mystical perspective. Now maybe religions, what are they good for now? What is the best tip for the religious provider? Off to the skies? You can choose. From the perspective of Mellon Thomas Benedict, the best skies are those of the Egyptians and the Indians, so those are the most interesting. One of my questions to the light was, what is heaven? So I took a journey through all the heavens ever created. The only warning, the blessed hunting grounds, all of them. I walked through them. We created them as thought forms. My comment again, because do you know what a Christian church service is for? Attention control, clear thought form pre-structured, charged with a strong feeling, sometimes also with a strong will. They collectively create mental forms. And that is also the power of the mass media. I personally like being in this culture, but I have this power that mass media draws attention, and they create forms that are perceived in such a way that I actually never allow myself to be showered by anything anymore. So always pay attention to what television radio does to your thoughts and feelings. Further, we created the heavens as thought forms. We don't go to heaven, We get recycled. But what we have created remains a part of us. He is real, but not the whole soul. I saw the Christian sky. We believe it is a beautiful place, and that we would stand there before the throne and offer the Lord forever. I tried this. It's boring. That should be all. This is just a childish imagination. I don't want to hurt anyone here. Some skies are very interesting and others are very boring. I found that the skies of ancient cultures are more interesting, such as those of the Native Americans, the eternal hunting grounds. The Egyptian skies are fantastic. This goes on forever. There are so many of them. In each, there is a branch that corresponds to your particular interpretation if you are not part of the group soul that believes in the God of a particular religion. Then you are very close, so to speak, in the same park. But even then, a small part is different. It corresponds to your idea. You left that impression there. Death is about life, not heaven. I asked God, which is the best religion on the planet? Which is the right one? And the deity responded with great love, that is immaterial. There was incredible grace here, because the answer implied that we were the only ones to worry about it. The supreme deity of all the stars tells us that it doesn't matter what religion you belong to. They come and go, they change. Buddhism wasn't always there, and neither was Catholicism, and basically everyone is about becoming more enlightened. More light now comes into all systems. There will be a reformation in spirituality that will be as dramatic as the Protestant Reformation. So far, a really big trip. I think that was a big concentrate. You are more, you mean you are God. This is the main point of the lecture. This is the essence of enlightenment. But that also means you are responsible for the forms you create as an individual, for the group you choose. It's about us being the God who created the world in the here and now, and becoming aware of this power. While many people initially say, I am inadequate, I am too small, the real power that is even stronger than aggression and destruction is love, because that is where consciousness becomes the clearest, the most radiant. Yes, that's it for tonight. Thank you very much.